Hey, my name is Savannah Dalton, and I'll be doing my presentation today on A Fever in the Heartland by Timothy Egan. I hope that you enjoy this slideshow and learn something from it. I'd like to first by giving an overview of information here before I get into the fine details of this story. As I stated, this book was written by Timothy Egan. He was an author, journalist, and former columnist for the New York Times. He wrote this book that I'll be reporting on today, most likely to bring awareness on how the Klan overtook the United States so easily. And I do believe he also wrote this book to inform the public of a story that isn't typically written about in the textbooks. During this presentation, I'll provide an overview of the book and its key details, but I do encourage everyone to go and read the book for themselves. Of course, I won't be able to cover a lot of the significant details of the book in this presentation, but there is definitely so much more to the story. Um, it truly will blow your mind and honestly open your eyes to the horrors of the Klan during this time and just how much this organization, if that's what you want to call it, um, affected the United States during this time as well as our present day. This book primarily outlines how the second chapter of the KKK grew into a national movement in the state of Indiana and expanded across the country in the 1920s. This was largely because D.C. Stevenson was a prime component of the Klan's expansion and was a big part in the success of the Klan, as well as Hiram Evans. Um, Stevenson was originally hired for $12 a week by the National Klan Recruiter to expand the Klan into the northern regions, and he began his chapter at the Wyndham Hotel in Evansville, Indiana. And he originally took this job to become rich. He knew the potential of the Klan, and he also knew how influential the Klan could be. Stevenson knew that in order to expand the Klan, that he had to figure out what made people tick, what motivated them in life. And through an experiment that he performed through a group of the Klansmen, he found that religion and faith was what motivated people. And so this was how he began to integrate the Klan's ideals into the church. He basically had a couple of the Klansmen barge into a church service, offer the preacher a handful of cash um, to see what his reaction would be. And he found that the preacher did support the Klan after this. And he also found that he was willing to integrate um, Klan ideals into his services, despite the fact that the Klan's ideals had absolutely nothing to do with the Bible and certainly did contradict the text within the Bible. So before long, the churches were hosting Klan events and promising their agenda of pure Americanism. A lot of the churches were Klansmen themselves, the preachers. It definitely became a big movement, and this was all because of the fact that Stevenson found how to integrate the everyday person into his Klan driven agenda. Stevenson's Klan grew very quickly. Before long, he received the Grand Dragon title. He became very rich, very well respected within the clan, and soon he held more power than the local officials across the state. His clan became part of the Invisible Empire that did not just attack or carry out crimes at night like the original Klan after the Civil War. It began to openly host Klan rallies, integrate the Klan into everyday life, infiltrate law enforcement, and became just a part of um, society. According to the book, all but two counties in the state of Indiana had Klan chapters, and the state was just overwhelmingly saturated with this group thanks to Stevenson's expansion efforts. Because of Stevenson's fame and fortune brought to him by the Klan, he was able to get away with a lot of things that the everyday person certainly would not. He was an evil, womanizing drunkard at heart. He had sexually abused many women on multiple occasions, but um, either evaded arrest somehow or the women were too afraid to speak up. So Stevenson did say that he was the law, and this did prove to be true based off of his influence. By the time that Stevenson had met Madge Oberholzer, he was very confident that he could get away with anything and he was invincible. Um, Madge was a very free spirited young woman, well educated, well motivated in everything that she pursued. This was a woman that deeply cared for her family and her parents and worked very hard to ensure that they had what they needed, even in her late 20s. Um, she was working for the state at the time that she met Stevenson, and she was very concerned that she would lose her job. So this did play a big role in why she met Stevenson. It's important to note, though, that Madge had no involvement with the Klan or Stevenson before she approached him about her job. She didn't condone the things that he stood for. After Madge had returned home from hanging out with one of her friends, she was forced to go to Stevenson's house to assist him with the nutrition book that he wanted her to help him with in return for saving her job. When she arrived, she found that Stevenson was drunk and no other women were around. Um, she was then forced to drink alcohol. Um, and when she tried to leave, Stevenson showed her the guns and threatened her life and later forced her onto a train. To make a long story short, on the train, he brutally raped her, leaving deep wounds all over her body from his teeth. Madge became unconscious and she woke up in a hotel. Um, Madge had asked to go to the drugstore to get some bandages for her wounds and ended up purchasing poison. She did have the chance to kill Stevenson before with his gun while he was asleep, but she realized that the legal implications that would follow if she killed him would be just very traumatic for the rest of her life. He was the most powerful man in the state. So Stevenson found out about this poisoning, refused to take her to the emergency room. He ultimately took her back to his house and dumped her in his garage. When his maid had found Madge, he, realized that she was in trouble. He was in trouble, and he dumped her back at her house. Madge's family found her, of course, at their home and realized the condition that she was in. Madge did suffer a very long and miserable death from the poison she ingested, but before she died, she was able to share what happened to her, and it was used as evidence against Stevenson. Although he did not directly kill her, her parents' attorney, William Remy, was able to prove that the wounds inflicted on her by Stevenson led to her death. Stevenson was charged with second-degree murder and was sentenced to 25 years in prison. It's also important to note here that William Remy faced a lot of threats and hate from the Klan. He had to hire a bodyguard during this time. Remy doubted whether he was going to win this case, especially since Stevenson had hidden Klansmen all over the state. Remy didn't know whether the jury was all Klansmen or not, so he had a lot of things that um, he wondered about whether this was really going to be worth it in the end for him, and whether he really could prosecute the most powerful man in the state at the time. And of course, Stevenson did try to get out of this. He tried to pay the jury off, and he also hired three attorneys to fight for him with this case. Madge Oberholzer's case wasn't just about prosecuting Stevenson, it was much more than that. This guilty verdict of one of the most powerful Klansmen led to the fall of the Klan. News headlines exploded before and even after Madge died. Her story became popular and well known across the state. This absolutely plummeted the Klan's reputation. Um, who, it was advertised that the Klan was led by a kidnapper, a rapist, and a murderer, and these were things that the Klan, ironically, allegedly stood against. It's hard to believe that because they did all of those things um, to people that they considered inferior to them. Um, the Klan memberships dropped by 90% 3 years after Madge's death. So this was a very pivotal moment in our history with the fall of this hate group. I wanted to include a few of the historical impacts from this book that I've learned about. I feel like it's important just to add these in for the sake of not just the story, but the history of this all. So, D.C. Stevenson supported and encouraged eugenics that we learned about in class. He felt that anyone who was not 100% American should be prevented from reproducing. And according to the epilogue in the book, sterilization laws remained in some states until the 1970s, which is extremely surprising. A lot of our parents were born by then. Another thing is that long after the Klan fell, of course, we know that racial violence and killings still persisted long into the civil rights movement. And in 1930, a mob broke out in Indiana. One of the mob survivors, James Cameron, later founded three chapters of the NAACP, which was also big. And then the most surprising thing that I've really learned in this was lynchings didn't become a federal crime until 2022 when Joe Biden signed it into law. This was 122 years later, and it's absolutely mind blowing that this wasn't outlawed many, 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 many years before this. I also wanted to include a specific list of things that I've learned from this book as well. One of the things I've learned is that the Klan did not just target African Americans. Thought this my whole life. They actually targeted other groups as well, such as Catholics, Jews, immigrants, even people who just were simply against the Klan's agenda and people that just didn't fit their mold. They didn't really have any limits as far as that goes. Um, Another thing I learned is this Klan that DC Stevenson ran was actually the second wave of the Klan. After the Civil War, defeated members of the Confederacy had formed the original Klan. Their motive was to reverse the freedom of former slaves, and they believed that these people would never be equal to them. Their bitterness and defeat drove the violence that was inflicted on the freed slaves. Another interesting thing that I've learned is that President Ulysses S. Grant actually used the government to take down the first Klan. I was really surprised by that. DC Stevenson had so much influence that it wasn't just that easy during this time. I also learned how one man could influence the entire country and uproot its foundations. That's very clear from this video, but even more clear if you read the book. And lastly, I learned how Madge Oberholzer, totally unrelated to the Klan's purpose or the Klan, really changed the foundation of history. I can't imagine where we would be today had the Klan not fallen. So, in conclusion, Stevenson did spend 25 years in prison for the second-degree murder of Madge. 1961, he was convicted of attempting to molest a 16-year-old girl after he was released, but he was given a suspended sentence and didn't serve time on that. He did marry two other women after his release. These, of course, were illegal marriages. He deserted the first one and moved to Tennessee, where he married a second woman. In 1966, he suffered from a seizure and died at the age of 74 in Tennessee. Unfortunately, he was never charged with any of the other crimes he committed, including those with and apart from the Klan. This is mind-blowing and very tragic. There was so many other things that he had done that he should have been charged for. This man should have never seen the light of day again, but he did. He spent some good time out of prison after he served the sentence for Madge's death. So that is all for this video. I appreciate you taking the time to watch it, and I hope that you learned something. And again, I do encourage you guys to read the book.